welcome or welcome back to the channel. You're seeing a lot of me in my new Adventure Time shirt. If you watched my February Reads Part 2, this is March Reads Part 1. My name is Sarah. I talk about books in my basement, and I wanted to talk to you guys about the things I have already read this month. It is the 6th of March. I have read 2 or 3 things, so I thought I would go ahead and update you guys because some of these are arcs and I really want to talk about them. So the first thing that I want to talk about is That Time I Got Drugged and Saved a Human. This used to be titled That Time I Got Drugged and Saved a Dragon, I believe. Anyway, this was traditionally published by Orbit, but originally was going to be self-published by Kimberly Lemming, and this is the 3rd in the Mead Mishaps series. I enjoyed this. I was correct on who I thought the protagonist of this one was going to be, and I'm on the fence if I want to even tell you. I know it's in the synopsis, but for people who are reading through the series, they may not want to read that because it is kind of a surprise on who this is. But this is a character that we have heard talk of before any other books, our female lead. The male lead is Dante. He is one of the dragons, one of the demons that has helped everyone in the previous books. He was rescued by Cinnamon in book 1, and in book 2 he was around and helped with everything going on with Bree and Felix. This follows Dante. He goes to visit a friend, and our female lead drugs him in an attempt to get him to help her leave this place where she has been kept captive for some years. And their relationship goes from there. I had one big qualm with this, and that there was some like hazy things when it came to consent. There were a few times where I was like, I'm uncomfortable with what you just did. But they talk things out, and it wasn't like super egregious. It was just enough for me to go, maybe not for me. I really found the portion of this book where Dante is drugged. He's effectively extremely high. Hilarious. I loved that part. That cracked me up. That was probably the funniest bit for me. The rest of it was okay. They go back, once they escaped this place, they go to Dante's home, and then back to the main village where everyone is, Boo Hale. There were also a few things, like inconsistencies in the world and setting, that kind of made me pause. Like the fact that he has been drugged and basically controlled for the past hundreds of years, yet somehow still had time to be a big fan of theater and band camp groups. I don't know. It was little things like that where I was like, what? When? So, just little things. I don't know if I'll pick up the next book. We'll have to see if she releases one, who it's going to be about. It's looking like maybe, if I had to make a guess based on this one, it might be Dante's sister, but I don't know. I would really love to see one of the orcs from the ship get a romance. That would be fantastic. This was fine. I think I gave it a 3-star. I would recommend it if you are continuing the series. This was definitely better than the second one for me. So there's that. The next arc that I read was These Fragile Graces, This Fragile Heart. Now, I'm going to try not to spoil this because it is very short. This is a sci-fi noir dystopian mystery novella. A woman who was once part of a anarchist commune is going back to the commune to see her ex after the ex has overdosed. Once she gets there, she determines that perhaps this wasn't an accident, that she didn't overdose and she was murdered. So she takes it upon herself to solve this mystery. I had a couple of issues with this. I really enjoyed it, but there were a few issues. There was a choice. My biggest one was there was a choice made about the romantic pairing in this that I was deeply uncomfortable with, and it's all gonna boil down to your thoughts on clones. It might give it away, but it's gonna boil down to your thoughts on clones. I didn't care for it. I also thought it was a little strange how adept our main character was at solving a mystery when she is, all we really know about her is that she's a security specialist. We're told this, we're not actually shown this, but she goes about solving this mystery and she's super kick-ass and all that stuff, which is fine. I just would have liked a little more explanation shown this a little more. What are her qualifications? That sort of thing. That sort of, it was fine. Not a huge deterrent. But my main thing was the clone issue. The clone issue was strange. Along her way, if she's murdering people, she's investigating the murder. She's not murdering people. She does murder some people. Anyway, along the way of investigating the murder, she is attacked by several clones. One of which she has to murder. I think 2 of them she has to kill. One of them is not killed. One of them turns to help her. So that's where some of the interesting questions about clones come into play. I really would like to see more people's thoughts on this. It doesn't have a lot of reviews on on Goodreads yet. I think at this point it's not out yet, but it will be soon. So if anyone reads this, please let me know what you thought, because I keep flipping back and forth on the rating. I gave it a 3. I probably could have given it a 4, but I really don't know how to feel about some of the things that were done in this. My brain wants to fixate on them a little too much, so 3 stars I think is where I settled. The last arc that I've read so far, and this was actually the last of my March arcs, so my March arcs are done already, thank God, and that is The Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis, and this was in fact a 5-star. This was one of my 5-star predictions for this year, and I am very happy that it was one. This is Grace Curtis's second book. Her first book was Frontier. It came out last year and I loved it, and this one is her, what do they call it, sophomore novel. This is set on a floating hotel that travels the same path around space, and people it's basically a cruise. People take this cruise for relaxation and fun, and it's all spearheaded and run by Carl, who kind of inherited that role from the previous woman after she found him as a stowaway. Now, Grace Curtis's style of writing definitely will not work for everybody, because I know not everybody likes multiple point of views, but she tells the story with the stories of the entire cast. So in this book, we get a big chapter, a chunk in every character's head. We learn their backstory and we see what they do in those moments and how that comes together in the end. We'll see, somebody over here, we hear their story and then we find out their experience here, and then on the other side of the ship, when we flip perspectives, something else is happening, and we start to put those pieces together ourselves with a different character's viewpoint. Phenomenal. I love this style. I like head skipping as long as it's done well, and I really love the way she did it. I loved all of these characters. Carl needs a hug, and I really wish I could give him one. This was phenomenal. It was cozy. There were some moments, though, that were very tense and had some high stakes. So if you like a traditional cozy in that there is almost no stakes, this is going to be not so cozy. But if you like just the tiniest bit of tension at the end of a cozy book, this is a good pick for you. I also very much, as always, recommend Frontier. I love that book as well. It's told in a very similar style, but it is much more of a hard sci-fi where someone crash lands on dystopian Earth and has to find the ship that they crashed from. So. And the final book that I read was not an arc, or that I have read so far. It's not an arc, and that is A Coup of Tea by Casey Blair. This book I have been reading little tiny bits at a time, late at night when I'm very sleepy and out of it. So I honestly, to be truthful with you, can't attest much to the first half of it. But it kept me going the whole time because I was very interested in what was happening. The writing was easy to understand. I really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to know, even if now I can't recall a lot of that first half. I sped through the last half. This is the story of, I can't remember her name, Miara. She is the 4th princess of this kingdom, and she leaves. She basically gives up the job. She's 4th in line. She can do that. She decides that she no longer wants to be a princess. She wants to find her own way in life, and she leaves. She ends up lost, wet, and in poverty on the streets. She has no home to go to, no way to pay for anything, and this tea shop, someone working at this tea shop takes her in, and so she begins a new life there at the tea shop on the grace, kindness, and the charity of others. It was really, really sweet, very cozy. There was quite a high stakes, this one again, high stakes at the end, but because of the nature of the story, you know it's going to work out just fine. There is a very wholesome romance thread throughout this that you really, so cute. It was so cute. I kind of saw it coming, but I still really loved it. I don't know how to explain it. I seem to recall thinking as I was going through it that things happened very quickly and off the wall, but it was still good enough that I kept going. I wish I could give a better review of this because I read it so in such a shitty way, frankly. I plan on reading the second book normally, as in not super late at night when I'm sleepy and can't remember it, but I did enjoy it enough. I was so attached to it that I went out of my way to order a physical copy. This took over a month to get to me because I think these are out of print or something, but I am happy to have it, and I definitely want to finish the series at this point. There was a whole thing with like a dragon race that came in at the end. It was great. This deals with some heavier topics too, like immigration, racism, classism, things of that nature. So if you don't want to read about that, not going to be a book for you. Also, we spend so much time in Miara's head. It's not first person, but she is constantly reflecting. She is the type of person who is always reflecting and always thinking about her impact, what she wants to do, and how she wants to feel, her feelings on things. So again, if you're not into a very introspective kind of point of view, not going to be for you. Otherwise, I enjoyed it. I would like to know other people's thoughts on it. Probably should check out some Goodreads reviews, to be honest, but I will be continuing with the second book, which is Tea Set and Match. I think I talked about it in my TBR. So, what am I currently reading right now? I am working on Lake of Souls by, I kicked you, I'm sorry. Lake of Souls by Anne Leckie. This is her short story collection. It's coming out next month. So far I'm liking it. I'm like 3 stories into it, so not very far at all. I need to work on it some more. I am still listening to Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brando Sando. I like Brando Sando. I've been reading his books since Elantris first came out. I read it when it first came out, and I've been reading his stuff, but I took a few years off. Frankly, I'm one of these people that the more you hype something up, the less I'm going to want to have anything to do with it, and Brandon, unfortunately, has fallen prey to that. He's everywhere, and so I'm just like, I'll give it some time. But I'm finally going to catch up on some of his stuff, and I started with Tress because that one, I had read the ebook of, like, the first portion when it came out because I kickstarted it, but I hadn't finished it, and I figured I'd go ahead and finish it. This is kind of a standalone in the Cosmere. I am reading The King Killing Queen by Sean Speakman. This one I also talked about in my TBR. This is about a young woman who works for the historian of her kingdom, and on the king's deathbed he names her his heir unexpectedly. She had no idea this was coming. His other heirs had no idea this was coming, and they are quite, reasonably upset about this, and they are not nice people, so she is now the queen and has to learn how to navigate that world. I have liked what I've read of it, which isn't a lot. And I have started Welcome to Harak, which is the 4th Calamitous Bob. That's my other Kindle read right now. And I am, this month, officially on a very strict book buying ban. I can't buy any books unless I have read 2 books. So that's 2 for 1, basically. And I am going to keep myself honest. I'm also going to try to read everything that comes in as it comes in. So A Coup of Tea came in last week. So which is why I pushed through and I finished it, because this is now finished. I have the physical copy and I have read it. It's finished. It came in and I read it. The Blighted Stars, technically I purchased this last month, but I am going to probably pick this up as soon as I finish The King Killing Queen as my physical read, because this also came in last week and it fell within March, so I want to read it now that I have it. I also am behind. I have an e-arc of this. This came out early last year, I think, or 2022, one of the two. And I really want to read 2023. I really want to read Megan E. O'Keefe. I've had her stuff on my radar since her original series, which I think was Velocity Weapon was the first book, or the name of the series. So hopefully I'll have a report on that in the next update. And the 2 books that are actually exempt from that because I didn't buy them, I got 2 arcs from Tachyon. I love Tachyon. They are the nicest people. I have Yoke of Stars by R.B. Lindbergh, which I didn't know that this was coming out when I did my most anticipated for this year. If I had known, this would have been the top of the list. I adore R.B. Lindbergh's work. Their first 2 books were some of my favorite books the year I read them. And when I got the email mentioning that this was available, I jumped. I feel like I almost kind of begged for it. But they sent it on lovingly. I can't believe it. This comes out in July, which is why this is exempt from my ban. I will read that in June. It will be my birthday present to myself to read that. And the other arc that I got was Runes of Engagement by David Kleka and Tobias S. Buckle. I read Tobias Buckle's, I believe it was called Stranger in the Citadel last year. Really had fun with that. So when I saw this was his new book, I was very interested. Then I saw the little tagline down here which says all initiative, no dice, and I was sold. The description is very urban fantasy and I am here for it. Basically, fantasy creatures and monsters show up in our world and we have to deal with them somehow, some way, who knows. These two are not part of the band, but I did want to mention that I got them. I'm very excited. Thank you so much again to Tachyon. It's the best publisher. I love getting their stuff. I really enjoy almost all of it. So that's it for my first batch of reads for March. Hopefully I will have some time. It has actually been nice and warm the past 2 days. Today not so much. It's been raining. But the past 2 days I have actually prioritized going outside and sitting and reading because it has finally been warm enough to do that. And if you're new, since last summer, that is my happiest place in the world, is outside reading. And that's where I managed to finish quite a bit of this stuff. I also finished 2 manga, but that'll be in my manga wrap up at the end of the month. So if it continues to warm up and I can spend some time outside, I will get a lot of reading done. Fingers crossed. I guess you'll find out in the next clip, so. Okay, hold on, you're crooked. There we go. Is that better? I think that's better. Alright, shit sticks. This thing is being dumb today. Okay, hello, here we go. Alright, this should be my update part 2 for part 1 of March reads. And let me tell you, March has been a month. March has been a month, and we're moving on. So, I have read a few things. I have a stack of books to haul because my husband bought me a bunch of books in appreciation for painting our basement hallway, which took me a few weeks, which is very lovely. He didn't have to do that, but I am very happy that he did. So let's get through this as quickly as we can. We do not have a ring light today because this is me on migraine medication and I don't want to play stupid games and win another stupid prize, and that stupid prize being another migraine. So no ring light, natural lighting. Moving on. The first thing I want to talk about, and probably my favorite read as far as novels go for this month so far, is Lake of Souls by Ann Leckie. I mean, it's technically not a novel, it's an anthology, or an omnibus? This is a collection of her short fiction. And this ranges from standalone stories to stories set in the Imperial Roch universe, to the Raven Tower universe. Now, I have read books in the Roch, I think I'm saying that right, the Imperial Roch universe, but I have not read Raven Tower. So I went into those stories completely blind, and her standalone stories are their own thing. And overall, this is like a very close to a 5-star collection, which is impressive considering how with short story collections, you know, you're gonna get varied stories. It's almost impossible to get a 5-star. This was fantastic. It was so good. I took notes on every single story because I enjoyed them so much. There were maybe 3 stories that I rated like a 3.5. There was one story that was a low 3 because I was a little uncomfortable with it, but the rest were 4 and 5 stars overall. I think my favorite story might have been the last, or 2 of my favorite stories were 2 of the last ones, both of which were in the Raven Tower world. The first was Beloved of the Sun. It's the last story. I loved this because I loved the idea of the butterfly and the ant gods fighting back against this god that, you know, proclaimed himself the ruler of all. And then Saving Bacon was just hilarious because it took the idea of like a Regency style culture and gender flipped it. And we were getting the story from the perspective of a young man who hadn't been married off yet. It was really funny. It was meant to be funny and it was very good. The one story that I was uncomfortable with, and I do want to call out just because it might make others uncomfortable, was The Snake's Wife. This one, I see what she was doing and I respect what she was doing, but I find sexual violence of any kind deeply uncomfortable against a man or a woman. And in this one, our main character is castrated and then treated as a woman because of a baloney prophecy. If you're at all familiar with the Raven Tower world, the gods are numerous, they're all over the place, and they are as powerful as their followers, and they cannot lie, but they can hedge the truth. And of course, so you get these crazy groups, these factions, you get people infighting, you get tiny gods. Like there's one story in these stories that is just a little salamander. He can't really do anything because he has no followers. And then you have, like in Beloved of the Sun, there is a hawk who is pretending to be the god of all, and he has an entire country under his heel, and he can control the weather. So, you know, it ranges. But in the Snake's Wife, we have two gods who are fighting, and one speaks a prophecy that may or may not be true, and it causes the two people to go to war in a way. And as I said, the son of the rival group is castrated and then treated as a daughter of the other house. And it was just, I see what she was doing. I think it was a statement on, like, almost a satire or a statement on old fantasy and the machinations therein. But it made me uncomfortable. So avoid that one if you're interested in the collection, but you don't want to read that sort of thing. The others, like I said, fascinating. Love this collection. I have actually pre-ordered a copy. I spent a book credit to pre-order a copy of this, and I'm very excited to have it on my shelves. I clearly need to read through the rest of her backlog because everything I have read from her has been great for me. So the next thing that I read was The King Killing Queen by Sean Speakman, finally. This is a indie published fantasy in the, like, epic old school style. This is published by Grim Oak Press, which is Michael J. Sullivan's press. And Sean Speakman has done a lot of anthologies and stuff in the indie world. And this is, I don't think this is his first full-length novel, but it's the first one of his that I've read. I read some of his short stories, so I decided to give this one a shot. Plus, it's stunning. I ended up giving this one like a 3.5. I really liked the idea in here. I liked the world he set up. I liked the magic he used, and I liked how he was kind of making this feel and making a project of returning almost to the classic fantasy roots in his storytelling. But there were a lot of places where I found holes if I thought about it too hard, questions I had that were left unanswered, which I think should have been answered, and they were important to the plot. And the storytelling style was a little cold for me. I didn't fully connect to our main character, which I feel like might be necessary in this type of story. This is the story of Ciliana, I believe is how you say her name, and she is the historian's apprentice at the palace, and the king is dying. So she and her mentor, the historian, are there beside him at his deathbed. He is telling them stories. She has been there for some weeks, and on his death he surprises everyone and names her his heir because it turns out, along with, it seems, half of the kingdom, she is one of his illegitimate children. And so she has to take the crown, but in the process of doing that, a civil war sort of sparks off. All of her siblings who are recognized as children of the crown are like, we're not okay with this. Also, you're a woman. Women can't be the rulers. Things like that. And you go from there. So again, older style fantasy. We've got a little more sexism than I anticipated, which, you know, kind of a hallmark. And it is built into this world as part of their setup. And it was just kind of cold. I will continue the series. I'm very interested to see where it goes. It's got very classic fairies and magic like that. My favorite bit was there was a unicorn at the end of this, and his name is Peagle, which I refuse to believe is not a reference to Peter S. Beagle and his last unicorn books, which I really do like Peter S. Beagle and his worlds, so that made me very, very happy. But this was like a 3.5. I am looking for the next book. I don't think it's out or a date is announced yet, but I will read it when I finally do see it. If there is a nice addition to go with this one, I might pick it up as well, just because the second one could really pick up, and then I would have a nice matching set. We'll see. We'll see. make no promises, but that's the plans for now. The next novel that I read, actually read all the way through, I was about to say, I think I only have one, but no, I have two. The next novel is Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell, and this was a little bit of a disappointment for me. This is another one where if I look really closely at it and its plot and story, it kind of falls to pieces. There's a lot of holes and questions that I have, but this is the story of Shin, who is a monster who's hibernating, and she's woken up by monster hunters that have broken into her lair. She defends herself, kills one to get away, and she is wounded, so she has to go out and try to find food. The story follows her as she, coming back up from her hibernation, comes to her like local town where she haunts sometimes, and finds out that this big family is coming to hunt her down because she put a curse on them many years ago. She has no recognition of this curse. Recollection. She has no recollection of this curse. And things unwind. She ends up meeting a young lady who ends up with ties to this family, very, very close ties. We go from there. So Shin falls in love with Homily, this young lady, and it's like an insta-love situation. It's very sweet for the most part, but this book is written and is pitched as quirky and charming, and Homily and her family are anything but. They are the opposite of quirky and charming. Homily is verbally and emotionally and physically abused by her family on page frequently and very intensely. I do not recommend reading this if that bothers you in the least bit. She is the family kicking dog. They treat her badly. They blame her for everything. She is constantly being gaslit and treated poorly, and it is very frustrating to read about. I didn't enjoy it. If I want quirky and charming, I'm gonna stick maybe to my slice of life, like cozy fantasies. This was not it. I also had some really serious questions about Shin and how she had the patterning and the thought processing that she did. She has this almost referential, she reveres, that's the word I want. She reveres her mother, but she was raised, she raised herself. She has no actual recollection, there's that word again, no actual recollection of her mother besides the jaws that her mother monster used. But she has created this almost fairy tale world where her father was deeply in love with her mother and her mother was a good person, all this stuff. And I have no idea where that came from. There's no history really on Shin outside of that. Where did her personality come from? All this stuff. And I just have a lot of questions. So that was like a low 3. The more I think about it, the lower I want to mark it down. So I'm not thinking about it anymore. So we're done. Don't recommend if you don't like incredibly toxic families. Like, straight on, I almost put the book down. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't DNF arcs as if I can help it. This one almost got it. So we'll see. Anyway, it was not my favorite. The last arc I read was A View from the Stars by Shishin Liu. I think is how I've heard that say. And I thought this was just a collection of short stories, but this is a collection of essays and short stories. Overall, this one was fine, but again, I didn't love it. His view on science fiction and fantasy, I feel, is a bit antiquated, old-fashioned. He is of the mind, and he states it a few times, that like science fiction is the far superior genre because fantasy is nothing but fairy tales and myths. And it's like, I don't think he's read any modern fantasy. I feel like perhaps we just don't agree. Me and him. And his nonfiction essays were a lot of that. He's very intelligent. I'm probably nowhere near as smart as him, but we definitely didn't agree on things. And I feel like the whole structure of the collection was very poorly put together. The essays and the order in which they were inserted and the stories that went with it, if a story went with it, made little to no sense. We would have like an essay that referenced one story and then a completely different story on the front end and back end of that essay, and it was like, why are we talking about that story if we have no context for it? So, not my favorite collection. I am unsure, honestly, if I am going to read The Three Body Problem after having read this, and I have read some of his other short works before, And the impression that I got then and now is that, again, I don't really agree with some of his ideas, but also he is a very pessimistic writer in comparison to, say, someone like Ken Liu, who also writes in the science fiction sphere. Ken Liu seems to have always like a note or a feeling of hope in his stories, or there is some reach for beauty, whereas Cixin Liu is not that. His is very bleak, and he seems to have a very pessimistic view of things. It just doesn't jive with me. That's all right. It's just not for me. So that's the arcs, the novels and things that I read. I want to briefly mention that I did skim through The Eye of the World. This is, I don't know how many times I have gone through this book and read it and reread pieces and bits, but I finally got my hands on a nice hardcover with the cover that I wanted. This is the cover I grew up reading multiple times, and they are reprinting them with these old school artwork in the hardcover, which is the easiest edition for me to read. I can't read mass markets. I did have the floppies with the new artwork on them, but this is just superior. So I did skim through this, and I put in some of my notes from the other edition, and I'll be donating it. I'm going to slowly build back up this collection I had. At one time, I had the entire collection of these in these covers in hardback, and young Sarah got rid of them. Same thing for this series. I used a book credit and purchased Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I have read this once or twice, and I'm going to try to finally finish the series eventually. I used to have all the hardcovers of these books and the original artwork, like, that you can't find anymore. I'm very sad I got rid of those. So I'll be getting the trade paperbacks. Moving on to the rest of the books that I did by myself, there is just one book, a Kickstarter, and some manga. I got The Great Hunt. I'm going to reread this one soon. I'm actually going to go upstairs after I finish filming, cook dinner, and then go through and mark my installments of this that I'm going to read per day to read through this again, because I do, like I said, want to finish that collection and possibly reread the books and get not caught up but finished. The other things that I have gotten myself, I kickstarted an indie book last year, Elegy of a Fragmented Vineyard. I read a portion of this and I really enjoyed it. I do not remember the summary to give you much of one, but it is circling around paladins, which is something I love reading about in fantasy. So I finally got my paperback edition. The Kickstarter was for the hardcover, but I couldn't afford to spring for the full thing. So I just got a paperback with a nice signed nameplate, and I'm very happy about that. I will finish that soon. I got on Pango Books. I used some Pango bucks and got some manga. So briefly, I got Fruits Basket 1 and 2, which is one of my favorite shoujo series, and Naruto Omnibus of 1 through 3. I read Naruto as it was coming out back when I was in high school, and I think it's time for a reread because my husband wants to watch Boruto, and we have no contact. So I'm going to try and reread so that I can help him and we can get into Boruto. And then I got Delicious in Dungeon 3 and 4, which is over there for my collection. And I got publisher mail, which I'm so excited about. Saga Press sent me The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. I was super interested in this one because it's a haunted house ghost story about a young woman who is looking for the truth of her past after her mother and sister were killed when she was young. So I will probably read this actually really soon. It just came out, I think, beginning of this month on the 5th, and it is very short. So hopefully I'll actually have something to say about this next wrap up. But thank you to Saga Press for that. I'm very, very happy about that. Now, the things my husband bought me, like I said, he got me some books in appreciation for painting the hallway. And frankly, I love painting the house. I love painting. I love doing housework. And if he's gonna buy me books to paint the house, I'll paint anything he wants. So we went to our local bookstore and they didn't have a whole lot. So I actually ended up just ordering a lot of stuff online. But at the local used bookstore, or the local bookstore, we didn't go to the used bookstore, I got the first 3 omnibuses of One Piece. This is to the end, I think, of the East Blue arc. It's close to it. I have enjoyed the One Piece that I have read so far. I need to pick up the next omnibus in the next week or two because I think that will actually put me caught up to where I am a little past, and I can continue on through. If you want to hear about my manga reading, I try to do a bi-monthly wrap up. It's been slow lately, so I haven't been doing a lot of them. when they're up, I talk about that stuff. The other manga he got me was the 4th in the 2nd JoJo arc, which I am also reading. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I have watched a lot of this show. He's watched more than me because I kind of watch on and off. But this is the arc with Joseph, who is my favorite Joestar, specifically old Joseph. And I do need to read through this arc to refamiliarize myself with young Joseph because I remember more of old Joseph. Related kind of to manga, I got the next Power Rangers graphic novel, which is volume 9. I call this a cheat, but it counts because he is also reading these, so we read those together. Now for the actual books that he bought me, we got Griffin in Light by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon. This is one of the Valdemar novels. I am very excited to read. The sequel to this comes out this year, so I want to get this read so I can pick up the sequel. And this is following the Griffins, who are a small sentient race that lives within Valdemar. I say small because there's not a ton of them that I remember there being a ton of. And they are kind of like the heralds almost. They're intelligent sentient creatures and they work hand in hand with the heralds frequently. It's been a very long time since I have read about the Griffins because it's been a long time since I've read a lot of Valdemar, but they used to be some of my favorite characters in the series. I'm super excited to see what's going on with those books. The last traditionally published book I got is Paradise 1, Endless Dark, Endless Terror by David Wellington. Books with Brittany. Brittany reads books. One of those two. She's my new favorite channel. Read this recently and loved it. And it was kind of on my radar because I love space horror. So I picked this up after seeing her rave about it and her review. I am very excited. It is a chunker though, so I'm a little bit intimidated, but looking forward to it nevertheless. And the 2 indie books I got Stone and Sky by Z.S. Diamante. Love the cover. Griffins, again, I didn't notice that I had a bit of a theme there, but love this cover. Very excited for this. This is one of those books, you know those books you just keep getting ads for over and over and over and over again. You have no idea why, it just keeps popping up. This was the one. Even my husband was getting ads for it, so I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go. Let's read it. So I'm very excited. It's got some very pretty, I like the chapter headings. They look like a little map. It's very fun. This is From Across the Sea, As Shadow Rises, a lone survivor may be the kingdom's only hope against annihilation. Orin is a sworn protector, a member of the Griffin Guard. He's proud to protect the kingdom against a dreaded nation of orcs, but when the fires of war burn bright from the north, his entire squadron falls to deadly wyvern riders, leaving devastated Orin bloody and alone. Ooh, okay. Sounds good. I like the whole lone survivor stands up to save everyone sort of trope. The final book I got, it's so pretty and it looks so ridiculous. I'm so excited. Kraken Rider Z. Look at the cover. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. This looks ridiculous. This is about a young, if I remember, because I've been following this since it came out, and it didn't have a physical release for the longest time. It's from Wraithmarked, which means I have high expectations, but this is about a young man who's like the lowest of the low, and he is part of a society that reveres the Royal Dragon Knights. These are men and women who bond with dragons, but he is like lowly, like ship scrubber. He ends up bonding with a kraken in a kraken's egg. He saved a kraken's life, and he is now on his way to maybe being a kraken rider. And like, what? Who comes up with this? Evidently, David Estes and Dirk Ashton do, and I am so on board. I can't wait. This sounds amazing. Kraken Rider Z. I love the cover. It gives me like almost Power Ranger-y vibes, like, you know, like the old school kind of action anime feel. It looks good. I'm super excited. So what I'm currently reading before I wrap this up, I am reading Court of Wanderers, right there it is, by Rin Chipeco. I propped my Kindle up without really thinking about it, but it worked out well. That's why. This is the second book to Silver Under Nightfall, which came out last year. I called it vampire anime bullshit, and this continues to be vampire anime bullshit, which means I'm enjoying myself. I'm also working on Trust of the Emerald Sea still. I'm about halfway through that. I kind of gave up on the audio on that. I'm picking it up here and there as I can, but I'm going through it so slowly with the audio that I keep skipping ahead in the physical book. And let's see, what else? I have two other books at least that I know of on the go. I've got The Fall That Saved Us. I'm still working on that one, and I'm still working on Welcome to Harak, which is going amazing. I'm loving that. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but I'm tired and the migraine is knocking. So that's it for the first part of my March wrap up. I'm going to go cook. Let me know if y'all have read any of these. What are your thoughts? Are you going to pick any of these up if you're interested in them? And have you picked them up? And actually, you know what? Most importantly, has anyone else picked up Kraken Rider Z? Please tell me. I want to know if it's good because this cover might be my favorite cover of the year. So fun. But that is it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.